Hello and welcome to Craving Creativity Club. I'm Elena and welcome to my studio. This week we're going to be using the collection of paper that you've been building up, as well as the decorated papers that you've created previously in this project, to make some torn paper landscapes. This is the 8th session of the Changing Seasons block of the Craving Creativity Club. If you've missed previous sessions, you can catch up by looking at the playlist on my channel, and do subscribe while you're there. I'll tell you a bit more about Craving Creativity Club at the end of the session. Now, let's explore some torn paper landscapes. I'm going to start by showing you some of the paper that I've got here. You'll probably recognise some of the work that I've done over the last few weeks as we're working through this project. So I've got some of the prints and paintings and drawings that I've done. I've also got other pieces that I've collected over time of bits and pieces that I've put together. There's various magazine pictures in sort of landscape colours. Sugar paper. I've got some manuscript paper. This is paper that I've done leaf rubbings onto. Let's see what else I've got. Wallpaper. This is wallpaper. It's got like a slight shine to it. Various papers. And one thing that you could consider doing, maybe if there's something that you've made that you don't really want to rip up, but you would really like to use the images, or perhaps if you like these ones, if you've done something on watercolor paper or quite heavyweight paper, which is not that easy to rip up, like these ones, you might photocopy them. So you can either take them to a library to photocopy. I'm fortunate enough to have a printer that's got a scanner on the top, which makes it very easy to just copy some of these colours from the paper onto just copy paper. The other thing that you need to be aware of is the grain of paper. So paper has a grain. You can see it quite easily in something like this parcel paper. You can see the lines in it and it's shown where the grain is. And you can rip a relatively straight line along the grain. If you try and rip in the other direction, it's actually, that's not actually done too badly, but it tends to be harder to rip in a different direction other than the grain. You might see it more clearly in something like sugar paper, that I can rip it in one direction and it will tear quite straight, and the other direction it will tend to go off in an angle. So I've attempted to rip it down here, but it's taken its own route. If I go this way, it'll go relatively straight because that is the direction of the grain of the paper. So that's worth being aware of. The other thing to be aware of, especially if you've got paper that has paint on it or something that you've coloured, and so the image or the colour of the paper doesn't go all the way through to the other side, such as with this copier paper, you might want to consider the direction that you're tearing in to keep the picture on top. So as you can see, I've torn along this line and the picture has stayed on top. So I've got this nice rough edge and the picture goes right up to the edge. Whereas with this one, this side, where this is torn, I've actually got the underside coming out. So if if I wanted to tear out, for example, along this interesting picture, and I want to keep the edge, I want to make sure that my picture always tears forward. And so I end up with a nice edge, but not like this sort of white section. Sometimes the white section is nice, and I quite like how, like here, this is just magazine paper. but I've got this interesting white bit, and with the blue it looks like maybe a cloudy effect, or like there's light shining from behind it. So consider how you want your paper to look when you finish tearing it as well. Okay, so I'm going to show you an example of a landscape that you might make now. This is totally imaginary landscape out of my head. And there are different ways to consider a landscape. In Western art, the artists tend to use atmospheric pressure to show what is further away in a landscape, which means that things that are further away tend to look lighter in colour. Yeah, if you imagine it's particularly obvious on a misty day that anything that's the further away things are, the more misty they start to look. If you're interested in art from the East, from like China or Japan, it tends to be things that are higher up on the page tend to be further away, and they do use some aspects of atmospheric perspective, but not quite as much as in Western art. So this first piece I'm going to make with you, I'm thinking about that. I've got a variety of different pieces that I've torn to make mountainy sort of shapes out of different types of paper, and you can see immediately with this one and this one, they're very different in value. We've got a much lighter tone, a much lighter value against a darker value. So as I make up my landscape, this one is going to need to be nearer to the front of my landscape, and this one further away at the back. So I'm going to start building that up, and I've chosen to begin with a type of paper. This is some of the no tree paper, I think it's called, or tree free paper. Not sure what this one's made of exactly, but it's I don't know if it's coconut husks or banana peel or something like that. It's quite interesting paper, which immediately gives me a nice background to work on. And I'm going to start at the top furthest away as well. I've got my glue. I haven't used any scissors for this or anything like that. It is totally just torn. I'm going to start with this, which is my lightest colour. And I'm not going to put it right at the top because I'll lose that nice bumpy shape that I've got. I'm just going to put it near the top, and the background of my paper now becomes like the sky. Press it down nice and firmly. I've got some manuscript paper that I'm going to stick down. I think my family would probably be horrified that I have torn up an old manuscript. I think this is the Messiah, if anyone's interested. I'm just going to stick down some bits of manuscript paper. And my next level, I think it's going to be this one here. So again, we're getting slightly darker in value as I work down the page. Not sure I like this very much. I might need to think about how I'm going to hide that, possibly simply by going straight across like that. Might even take that out. So this glue is taking a little while to dry, which is really suiting me well because it means that I can fiddle around and move things around a little bit before it all dries. Okay. I think I'll have another piece that's similar to that one. You can see as I'm working down the page, covering up the bottom section of each piece that I've placed in. I quite like that. I'll go with that one next. This is another one of those tree-free papers that I printed leaves on weeks and weeks ago now, and they do tear very strangely, some of them, which is nice. It's interesting, but it does make it difficult to get a straight line. This old piece from a long time ago, just on brown paper. And finally, this dark bit of magazine. Right down at the bottom. And that really is as simple as this needs to be. I feel like it's not that exciting at the moment. I've got this sort of perspective coming down the page here, with the lighter at the back and the darker at the front. But I think I want to add a few little points of focus. So I'm going to use this bit of magazine, and there's some interesting shapes around the bottom. So I'm just going to tear around them carefully. I'm not worried too much about being too accurate. I just want to get some of these shapes out. Which are interesting. I quite like these that I've made, these little marks that I've made here. So I think I shall have a go at tearing around some of them. Okay, so this means that I can add some extra sections in. Take that off. Go that way, I think. Just adding a little bit more interest in certain places. I don't want to lose that point. I'll put that in there. Right, I'm going to leave that as it is for the moment and think about it a bit. When I've decided whether it's finished or not, I'll trim off the edges as well, so we've got some nice straight edges also. Right, here comes another example of a landscape that you might try. This one is actually based on a photograph that I've taken of one of the rivers that's near to where I live. And I've just sketched some lines onto this paper to represent some of the parts of the photograph. So we've got the sky, there's this little bit of land here, the river, and then some more land, quite a lot of land here. And there's kind of a path running through that I want to accentuate a bit as well. And I've begun collecting some colours as well. So the sky is actually a relatively dark blue, and I'm going to have a go and see what this sugar paper looks like as part of the skyline, combined with, oh, that way up maybe, some of these blues from a magazine, and just bringing it down to that sort of brightness, maybe actually that one. So I'm not sticking anything at this stage, I'm just trying out some ideas. Yes, I think like that. And then we have this strip of land, and I want to use some of this paper, which is a photocopy of some of the watercolour prints that I made. So I need a strip that's wider at one end than the other. I'm going to start by just ripping along, and then I want this end to be wider than this end, or the other way up, this end, I think this end to be wider than this end. So I'm going to tear a bit more carefully this time. And see how that fits. That fits quite nicely along there. Whoops. And then I've got the river bits itself, and I want them to go underneath because the river is under the land. So I'll probably end up sticking those first. And I'm just going to piece together some images from some watery sorts of images from a magazine. And then some more of this coming along here. So I think what I'll do is just simply rip along again. Something like that. But then I have this path that's coming through. And this is a darker portion of the same image. I might need to piece together my path. I'm not sure. I might actually need to use a different colour altogether. Yes, I'm going to need to piece it along like that. See, that's not too bad. Going along like that. And we've got these sort of slightly darker colours here, which I'm hoping will be different enough to these to keep it looking like a path. I might need another piece underneath that's darker still. So I'm experimenting a little bit with layers, or perhaps simpler. Use some of this. Yes, I think that might be the way to go. Okay, so I've got some ideas now, and I'm going to start sticking. And I'm going to begin. I'll start by sticking this large piece of sky, I think, and then stick down the river section. And then the river's coming along here. I'm not worrying too much about going over the edges of my pencil drawing. They're just a guide. think I actually want this piece to go underneath. Again, the fact this glue doesn't dry too quickly is helpful. So there's my river, and then I need the rest of my sky to come down about to this line here. We'll start sticking on some more blue. I might use a bit more of this. Oh, actually, no, I've got this. This kind of looks kind of like clouds, or like those sort of striations that you get in the sky when it's not cloudy as such, just sort of a little bit of weather happening. And then I've got this piece. Shall I use this one? Shall I use this one? The second one, but tear the bottom off. It's a bit too much going on here, so I'm just taking some of the bottom off like that. And that to be relatively straight along there. I might need a piece of this as well to layer it. Yes, like that. Yep. I'll stick those down. So again, I'm just following the line that I already drew. That. Right, and then I'm going to need some of this sort of colour. I already tore a piece out like that. I don't want to use that really dark bit. I think I just want to use that. Will that fit? Not quite. So I think I'm going to need to layer it again. The line going along there. And a line coming back the other way. I'm going to need a bit here as well. And I want the river to look like it is sort of below the edge of this. Like that. Right, and then I need to work out this path. So I want to give it a bit of a layer, and I'm just deciding what to use for that layer. And I think I want the brown paper behind it. So I'm going to test strips of the brown paper. And just lay them along for now. like that. I don't want to stick them down onto the paper yet. I'm just going to stick them to themselves so that they're making that shape that I want already. So that's essentially my path following that line that I've made. And then I want this darker colour to go over the top. So I'm just tearing along here as well. I want the path to disappear off that way. And it gets wider at this end, so I'm going to need some wider section. Actually, that section looks really quite nice like that as it is. Put that along there. This over the top, just take that white bit off. So that's my path. And then I'm going to have this, sections like this. Now this is why it can be really helpful to actually just photocopy some of your pictures, because you can use the colours over and over because you've got copies of them. So let me find my other my other copies of this in the big mess of paper. So what I'm going to do is actually going to cover up the rest of that path with this. Get some torn lines going along there. Way around, I think. So this first bit is just following the edge of the river. Right, I found I needed some more of this colour, so I had to photocopy it again. And now I've stuck it down and made this sort of textured pattern here. And when I run the path along like that, I'm feeling like it's too samey at the moment, and I maybe want a bit of green, but not bright green, something quite dark and dull. Now I've got some of that, which is too. Now this is old. This is some printing I did ages and ages ago, and I think maybe that is the green that I want. But I don't know if I want it to go that way or that way. I think you can see here how you can kind of play around with what you want, what you think you might want. I'm actually going to stick part of the path that I made. I like that line there. And then tear it off after sticking. Moving. Yes, I think I do quite like that edge on the path. I need to find some more bits that do the same thing. I'll stick it on along that one as well. Along that edge there. Now my path looks a little bit more. I think I prefer that. Which means now I shall stick it all down. Now another thing that the original had is it had a few trees along the edge of the bank and bits and pieces sticking out. So I'm going to add a few really much darker sections to represent trees and edges. So I'm coming back to this that I did, and I like these sort of lines coming along here and this one here. So I'm going to have a go at ripping some of those out. Fiddle around with them. Oh, way up looks quite nice. I'm just going to tuck it. Can I tuck it in there? There, like that. It's coming off the edge of the bank. Let's have another one. It's a tall piece. You can tuck there. See if I can, there we go, just peel up the very edge of the bank so it's going. So I think the values are not quite as I wanted, but I do quite like the composition. So I'm going to cut the edges and then I'll show you all the pieces that I've done. Okay, so let's have a little look at some of these finished landscapes that I've made. We'll start with this one, which is the first one I showed you, with the landscape starting very pale at the back with the furthest away and getting darker in value as we move towards the front. And I really like this. I like the gold bits here. I always like a bit of gold, and I like that the wallpaper at the top actually glints as well. It makes me think a bit like snow on mountains far away, which is interesting. I'm quite pleased with this. I think perhaps some of the value contrast could have been a bit better, but I'm okay with that. Um, I only feel like these bits that I sort of put in to represent trees or bushes or things that are in the landscape, they maybe don't stand out as much as I would like. Um, However, as a way of showing what you can do with torn paper, I do really like it. I particularly like the way this piece sort of comes out as a mountain, and I like the effect of having this this manuscript paper behind. That's quite interesting as well. So yeah, I'm quite pleased with that. This is the one I made with the river, and again, there are aspects of it that I like better than others. Um, the river, to start with, I think maybe the banks could have had a little bit more definition, similar to how I did with the path. I quite like the green that I've got along the path here. And maybe I could have done something similar, especially just behind the river. I feel like that's something that another time I would add in. I really like the effect of these layers of torn paper that are all torn from the same image, and then layered up. I really like that. And I think another time I would probably turn them around and have them going the other way. At the moment, they're too similar. The direction is too similar to the path. So I think another time I would think about having a different direction. However, I'm quite pleased with this as well. I also made this landscape, which is more traditional in it that it is a landscape piece of paper. And I quite enjoyed this as well. I liked the sky is quite light, but it has these shapes in it. So originally they were leaves that have been leaf rubbings that I'd done. And the purple and the pink obviously are quite unusual for sky colours, but I feel like it kind of works. We've got this sun sort of image coming up that kind of goes with that purpley pink. I don't know if it's going up or it's coming down, one or the other. And I like the effect of all these different sort of stripes of landscape that are coming through as well. To a certain extent, we've got this sort of light to dark in value going on, but then this one line here that stands out quite a lot more, I feel is quite effective as well. I'm quite pleased with that. So I've got the three landscapes here. Let's zoom out a bit so you can see all of them together. And yes, I'm quite pleased with all of them. So I want you to think of doing this as a part of experimenting in order to get ideas for our final piece, which will be starting next week. So this is just a reminder of the things that you've got, the things that you've done, and what you can do to take them further. So I've got some notes that I'm going to be making with these about things like thinking about direction, thinking about layers, the bits that I like, how to use value to accentuate parts of the landscape. And I've also learned the types of patterns that I enjoy, that I really like this sort of effect, whereas I'm finding this is a bit too busy. So using images, using sections of the same image seems to work better for me than using sections from lots of different images. So that's something that I want to keep in mind as I'm going forward. So yes, when you've done a few landscapes, try to review them a little bit and think about what you'd like to do going forward, and where you might take them for your final piece. I hope you enjoyed watching that exploration and you feel inspired to have a go for yourself. If you want to join the Craven Creativity Club membership, you can find it at www.elenastorrett.uk. just scroll down a little bit and click on the Craving Creativity Club logo. Here, there on the website, you'll be able to find PDFs, any live Zoom sessions that we have, extra resources, blog posts, and also a discount to mentorship sessions if you want them. For the rest of 2025, membership to the website part of Craving Creativity Club will be free. Then from January 2026 onwards, it'll be just £5 a month. Don't worry though, all the YouTube sessions you find here will continue to be free. That's all for now. Please like, comment and subscribe so that you don't miss any more videos. And I'm looking forward to seeing you again soon.